Imagine being 6 years old. You still play with dolls, you still need help tying your shoes, and yet you're crowned Queen of England. That was the fate of Isabella of Valois, a child bride, a political pawn, and one of the most tragic figures of the 100 Years' War. Her life is the story of peace bought with innocence, of love found too late, and of a young queen who shone briefly before being consumed by the darkness of her age. Welcome to Epochlight. Our story begins in 1396. The 100 Years' War had been raging for generations. France and England were exhausted, starving, and desperate for peace. The solution? Marriage. The groom, King Richard II of England. A 29-year-old ruler, artistic, melancholic, still grieving the death of his first wife. The bride, Isabella of Valois, a princess of France, a daughter of Charles VI, and only 6 years old. At the port city of Calais, this bizarre wedding took place. Imagine the scene: soldiers who had fought each other for decades now lining the same streets in celebration. Richard knelt before the tiny child who was now his wife. The marriage wasn't about love, of course. It was about survival. And it worked. This union promised a 28-year truce, one of the longest pauses in that brutal conflict. 1 year later, Westminster Abbey thundered with music and bells. Isabella, just 7, was crowned Queen of England, her tiny frame drowning in robes of silk and ermine. She was now the living embodiment of peace. A child, wearing the crown of an empire. Isabella's childhood in France had been anything but stable. Her father, Charles VI, suffered terrifying bouts of madness. He once believed his body was made of glass and that he might shatter at a single touch. Growing up in that palace must have been chaos, but in England, Isabella found something she had never known before: stability. Richard II treated her not as a wife, but as a daughter. He gave her lavish apartments at Westminster, filled her days with tutors, languages, music, and dolls. He visited often, showering her with gifts, and treated her with genuine kindness. For a girl raised in the shadow of a mad king, Richard must have seemed almost like a father. Against all odds, Isabella began to feel at home. But in medieval politics, peace never lasts. In 1399, Richard's cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, returned from exile with an army. Within weeks, Richard's throne crumbled beneath him. Richard was imprisoned, and Isabella, now just 9 years old, was stripped of everything. The lavish rooms of Westminster were replaced with the cold stone walls of the Tower of London. Her French attendants were dismissed. She was isolated, frightened, and very much a prisoner in a foreign land. Richard visited her only rarely, now a broken man trying to explain to a child the collapse of his world. And then the final blow. Richard was dead, murdered in captivity. Isabella, barely 9 years old, was now a widow, a foreign orphan stranded in the hands of the new king, Henry IV. 2 years passed. Finally, Henry allowed Isabella to return to France, but only if she renounced all claims as Richard's widow. The journey home was bittersweet. She was leaving the only home she could remember. She now spoke French with an English accent. She preferred English fashions. She wasn't quite French anymore, and certainly not English either. Back in France, her father's madness had worsened. The French court was a snake pit of factions and betrayal. And then hope. In 1406, Isabella, now 16, married Charles, Duke of Orléans. This time, it wasn't just politics. Charles was cultured, a poet, a lover of art. And unlike Richard, he was close to her age. Their wedding in Notre Dame was filled with genuine joy. For the first time in her life, Isabella walked the aisle not as a child pawn, but as a young woman in love. She finally belonged. In the court of Orléans, Isabella found happiness. She gave birth to a daughter, Jeanne, and later became pregnant again. But fate was cruel. In 1409, at just 20 years old, Isabella died of complications in childbirth. She left behind a husband who adored her, a baby daughter, and the promise of a life that might finally have been her own. Her story ended before it truly began. Isabella of Valois was more than just a pawn in the 100 Years' War. She was a child who wore a crown, a prisoner who longed for freedom, a wife who found love too late. Her life was brief, but it shines as a reminder that history is not just about kings and battles. It's about human beings struggling for dignity, for love, and for a place to call home. So, what do you think? Was Isabella simply another victim of royal politics, or did she manage to carve out her own legacy despite her short life? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey into the hidden lives of history's forgotten queens, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us again here on Epochlight.